He says he doesn't want a serious relationship. Yet every morning, without fail, he texts you, "Good morning." Every night, he checks in. He asks about your day. Sometimes he even calls. But when the topic of commitment comes up, he retreats. The line is always the same. "I'm not ready for anything serious right now." And you're left wondering, if he doesn't want anything serious, why does he act like he does? You sit on your bed, staring at his latest message. It's sweet, it's thoughtful, and it's making you question your own sanity. Maybe he's just being nice. Maybe you're reading too much into it. Maybe, just maybe, he'll come around. But deep down, something feels off. This isn't just your story. It's the quiet confusion millions of women are carrying right now. The text that gives hope. The call that rekindles doubt. The attention that keeps you tethered without clarity. It's not dramatic. It's not cruel. It's worse, it's ambiguous. And ambiguity, that's where heartbreak hides best. You start to ask yourself the questions you're afraid of the answers to. Is he lonely, or is he leading me on? Does he care, or does he just need someone to talk to until something better comes along? Am I special, or just convenient? Let's be honest. We live in a world that romanticizes mixed signals. He texts you daily. He must be into you. He says he's not ready. He's just scared. He pulls away but never lets go completely. It's complicated, but here's what no one wants to say out loud. Consistency in communication is not the same as commitment. Attention is not affection. And texting every day does not mean he sees a future with you. If this feels personal, it's because it is. It's personal to every woman who has ever waited by her phone, hoping today's message means more than yesterday's silence. It's personal to every heart that's been led on by breadcrumbs of affection with no real meal in sight. And maybe you've tried to play it cool. You've told yourself you're okay with things being casual. You've mirrored his language. You've swallowed your longing, your questions, your hope. You've become a master of pretending not to care, all to avoid pushing him away. But the truth is, you're not okay. Not really. You're confused. You're tired. And more than anything, you're starting to lose your sense of self in the haze of almost. Almost a relationship. Almost loved. Almost enough. This video isn't going to give you fluffy answers. It's not here to decode his zodiac sign or give you the perfect text to make him want you. This is not about playing the game. It's about walking away from it altogether. Because you deserve better than to be stuck in limbo. You deserve answers. Clarity. Effort that matches your own. You deserve someone whose words and actions don't live in contradiction. Someone who doesn't make you guess how they feel. Someone who chooses you fully, not just conveniently. So if you've ever been in this place, if you've ever felt the tension between what he says and what he does, if you've ever felt like you're slowly disappearing in the waiting, stay with me, because what we're about to unpack might sting, but it will set you free. And if you've felt seen in the last few minutes, if your heart has quietly whispered, "That's me," then consider subscribing. Not just to the channel, but to a different standard. A standard where your emotional labor isn't handed out for free. Where your love is not on layaway, waiting for someone to be ready. Let's talk about the patterns. Let's talk about the psychology. Let's talk about the hidden cost of being almost chosen. Because once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. And that clarity, it changes everything. He doesn't want a relationship. He's made that clear. He told you he's not ready, that he's not in the right place, that he's working on himself. That timing isn't right. And yet, he texts you every day. Why? Let's step outside the emotional fog for a moment and look at this from a psychological lens, clean, clinical, unromantic. At the core, many men who engage in this behavior are not trying to manipulate in the obvious, villainous way. It's more subtle, often unconscious. It's about control, about comfort, about keeping options open while avoiding emotional risk. In psychological terms, this is called Avoidance attachment with intermittent reinforcement. It's not random, it's not innocent. It's patterned behavior that allows him to feel close enough to you to gain emotional benefits without ever stepping into vulnerability. Let's start with the first layer: emotional convenience. When a man says he doesn't want commitment but still texts, what he often means is this: I don't want to lose access to you. You've become a source of emotional warmth. You respond, you listen, you validate. You fill a gap without demanding anything that makes him uncomfortable. Texting allows him to maintain proximity without responsibility. He gets connection without confrontation. He receives intimacy without investment. And he knows, at least intuitively, that the more often he texts you, the harder it becomes for you to walk away. And that's exactly where the quiet power lies. Now ask yourself this: why not just let you go? Why not disappear, move on, and respect the boundary he set by declaring himself unavailable? Because that would mean losing the emotional backup plan. Because that would mean letting go of a soft place to land when loneliness creeps in. Because that would mean facing the void. And here's what many people overlook: a man who avoids relationships isn't always avoiding you. He's avoiding himself, his own discomfort, his own fear, his own vulnerability. Let's talk about validation. Some men text you every day not because they care, but because they care how you care about them. Your attention confirms their desirability. Your quick replies tell them they still matter, that they still have you. It's an ego loop. And ego loops are addictive. This is especially common in men who, consciously or not, equate their self-worth with their ability to remain wanted. They don't need your love, they need your availability. As proof, as reassurance, as a mirror. Now let's get colder. Power dynamics. There is a quiet, rarely discussed kind of control that comes from emotional ambiguity. If he keeps things vague, if he never defines the relationship but still stays present, he remains the one setting the terms. He's in charge of the tempo, the emotional tone, the escalation or withdrawal. It's subtle dominance. Because while you're trying to read into every message, he's never had to clarify anything. While you wonder what it means, he enjoys the benefit of your attention without offering the same in return. And if you ever bring it up, if you ask, "What are we?" he gets to fall back on his original script. "I told you I wasn't ready." He's not lying, but he's also not being honest. Now, let's pause. Maybe you're thinking, this sounds manipulative. This sounds calculated. And yes, in some cases it is. But in many others, it's not malicious. It's emotional immaturity wrapped in charm. It's fear dressed as logic. It's a lack of self-awareness that feels like authenticity on the surface. Let's bring in a story. I once spoke to a woman, let's call her Lynn, who was texting a man daily for 6 months. They talked about everything. He sent her music recommendations, tagged her in memes, called when he was sad, flirted endlessly. But every time she hinted at seeing him more, he said, "Let's not ruin what we have." She stayed, because the daily messages made it feel real, safe, like it was just a matter of time. Until one day he stopped replying. Weeks later, she saw him post a photo with another woman. His caption, "Finally found the one." Lynn wasn't angry, she was gutted. But what broke her more than the betrayal was this: she had confused attention with intention. That's the trap. We live in a culture where constant communication feels like commitment, but it's not. Frequency does not equal depth. Consistency in texting does not mean consistency in character. And here's the hardest truth: a man can crave your presence while simultaneously knowing he'll never choose you. He can feel comforted by your texts, entertained by your banter, soothed by your charade, still walk away when it no longer serves him. Not because you weren't good enough, but because he never planned to stay. That's the unspoken contract. He wants the connection, not the cost. He wants your presence, not your pressure. He wants to feel wanted, not to want in return. And when you ask for more clarity, commitment, consistency, he'll say, "I told you I wasn't looking for anything serious." as if that sentence undoes the months of emotional intimacy. So what now? First, stop mistaking communication for commitment. Second, stop giving away emotional access to someone who has explicitly opted out of responsibility. And third, ask yourself the harder question, not, does he care? But why am I accepting this version of almost love? Because the real work isn't in analyzing him. It's in understanding what part of you is still waiting for the bare minimum to become meaningful. Maybe you've been conditioned to believe that being chosen means being patient. Maybe you've learned to accept emotional crumbs as a sign of future fullness. But here's the truth. You don't need to be a placeholder in someone else's indecision. You don't need to keep showing up for a role that was never yours to play. If he wanted you, truly wanted you, there would be no confusion, no delay, no daily texts, with no depth behind them. Desire makes itself known, and so does avoidance. But if you think that's painful to hear, wait until we talk about what it costs you to stay. Because in the next part, we won't just talk about him, we'll talk about you, about your energy, your emotional labor, your worth. Because the real heartbreak isn't in being left. It's in realizing how long you waited for someone who never had the courage to choose you in the first place. There comes a quiet, piercing moment when you stop asking what he wants and start asking what you deserve. And in that moment, the entire dynamic shifts. Because suddenly, you're no longer playing the game of decoding texts or wondering if today will be the day he chooses you. You start choosing yourself. But that doesn't happen by accident. It happens the day you realize not everyone who has access to you deserves it. That attention is not proof of value. That frequency of communication doesn't equal depth of connection. That a man who texts you every day but still keeps you in the waiting room of his life isn't offering love, he's offering distraction. And you? You were never born to be a distraction. You were born to be a standard. Let's be clear. Not everyone deserves to touch your energy. Not every hand should hold your time. Not every voice should reach your mind. And certainly not every message should be met with a reply. You are not a public park. You are a private sanctuary. But somewhere along the way, many women forget that. They confuse openness with availability, compassion with compliance, presence with permission. And before they know it, they've built a life where being needed matters more than being honored. Luxury psychology is not about arrogance. It's about sacred boundaries. It's about understanding that when you treat your energy as rare, the world starts responding to you differently. You stop being an option and start being a revelation. Think of yourself as a palace. Inside that palace, there are many rooms. Some are open to all your smile, your kindness, your presence in a shared space. But then there are the inner chambers, the rooms that hold your softness, your truth, your love. Those are not for everyone. Those are earned. And that's where most heartbreak begins. When you let someone into the innermost rooms of your soul without checking if they even know how to take off their shoes. Carl Jung once said, "If you do not confront your shadow, you will spend your life searching for the light in all the wrong places." And here's what that means in love. When you don't acknowledge your own fear of abandonment, you'll accept half love as something whole. When you don't sit with your own unworthiness, you'll beg to be seen instead of becoming the one who sees herself. When you avoid your own shadow, you mistake the flicker of someone's interest as the sun. But you are the sun. You are the fire. And you need to stop shrinking into sparks just to keep someone else warm. So let's talk value. Your value is not up for debate. It is not defined by how quickly someone texts you back, how much someone flirts, or how long someone keeps you in mind. Your value lives in the fact that you wake up every day with a heart that feels, a soul that longs for truth, and a mind that wants to grow. It lives in the fact that you know how to love deeply, that you listen, that you forgive, that you care. These are not traits of weakness. These are the marks of royalty. But royalty does not campaign to be noticed. The queen does not beg to be invited into her own throne room. She waits, and in the waiting, she watches. She filters, she discerns, because she knows the cost of allowing the wrong energy too close. She knows that her presence is a gift. And gifts are not thrown, they are offered, intentionally, to the worthy. You have to stop replying just because someone asks. You have to stop showing up just because someone shows a little interest. You have to stop saying yes to energy that doesn't nourish you, that doesn't elevate you, that doesn't match the power of who you are becoming. Ask yourself this: are you choosing yourself, or are you still waiting to be chosen? That's not a rhetorical question. That's the truth peeling back the curtain of your current reality. Because if every decision you make in love is rooted in fear, fear of losing him, fear of being alone, fear of seeming too much, then it's not love you're seeking. It's safety, it's certainty, it's proof. And real love requires none of that. Because real love meets you where you are, as you are, and invites you higher without asking you to shrink. Luxury is not about how many want you. It's about how many asterisks can't access you without intention, clarity, and integrity. It's about becoming so in tune with your own worth that silence becomes louder than mixed signals. That solitude becomes more sacred than half-hearted companionship. That walking away feels like victory, not loss. When you operate with that kind of energy, you confuse people who are used to easy access. You unsettle those who relied on your self-doubt to keep you chasing. You disturb those who benefited from your compliance. But you weren't born to be palatable. You were born to be powerful. And power starts with presence. The presence to say no when something feels off. The presence to step back instead of leaning in when confusion reigns. The presence to close the door not with anger, but with reverence for yourself, for your peace, for the version of you that finally said, no more. Let this be your turning point. Let this be the moment you walk into the forbidden room, the one you keep locked inside yourself. The room where your deepest knowing lives. The room that whispers, you were never meant to beg. You were meant to blaze. So the next time he texts, and your heart flutters, ask, is this honoring me, or is this just delaying my clarity? The next time he says, I miss you, after disappearing for weeks, ask, does he miss me or just the version of me that was always available? The next time you feel that urge to reach out, to fix, to follow up, pause, breathe. Remember the woman you're becoming, because you are no longer a mirror reflecting someone else's desire. You are a flame. And flames don't chase, they rise. Let him wonder where you went. Let him feel your absence and question how he lost access. Let the world relearn how to approach you. Carefully, honestly, fully, because from this moment forward, you are no longer waiting to be seen. You see yourself, and in that gaze, you reclaim everything they tried to convince you to give away. Your silence becomes your signature. Your boundary becomes your beauty. Your energy becomes the currency no one can afford without real love to offer in return. He texts again. Same timing, same rhythm. A casual, hey, a meme, a vague check-in. It's familiar, almost comforting. But this time, something in you doesn't move. You read the message, but you don't feel the need to respond. Not out of anger, not to prove anything, just because you've changed. This is what happens when awareness finally replaces longing. You stop reacting, not because you're trying to be cold, but because you've realized that not every message requires your energy. Not every breadcrumb needs to be picked up. Not every open door should be walked through. Here's the truth. You don't need to block him. You don't need to send a long message explaining your silence. You don't need to teach him how to treat you. You just need to return to yourself. And that return begins with one of the most underrated yet revolutionary choices a woman can make: to be still. Silence is not emptiness, it's clarity. It's a sacred pause that says, I am no longer available to confusion. This is not the silence of bitterness. It is the silence of sovereignty. The kind that says, I am not punishing you. I am protecting me. Because when you no longer feel the need to prove your worth, your silence becomes the most powerful boundary. Let's talk practically. What do you do when he keeps texting? You observe. You wait. You let the message exist without rushing to answer it. You breathe into the discomfort of not being needed as an emotional responder. Because here's the thing. His text is not a sign of love. It's a ping. It's an echo of old patterns. It's a thread he hopes you'll keep holding. But the thread leads nowhere. It's just a loop you no longer have to enter. Letting go is not about cutting someone off. It's about releasing the internal contract that says, I owe a response because he reached out. You owe yourself more. And when you begin honoring your energy in this way, something inside you settles. The need to be chosen dissolves. The ache to explain yourself quiets. You stop being the woman who waits. You become the woman who decides. That's the shift. But let's not romanticize it. It's not always easy. Sometimes silence is painful. Sometimes you'll stare at your screen for minutes, your thumb hovering over the keyboard, crafting and deleting replies. Sometimes the urge to re-engage will feel overwhelming. That's normal. You're breaking a habit. You're rewriting a narrative that told you your value was in your availability. But remember this, you are not rejecting him. You are realigning with you. You are no longer here to be someone's almost. You are no longer here to sustain someone's emotional comfort while starving your own. You are here to hold space for yourself, for truth, for the kind of love that doesn't ask you to wait in confusion. So how do you walk away with grace? By walking toward yourself. Start by rewriting the rules. No more waiting for clarity from someone who benefits from your uncertainty. No more decoding messages that should be direct. No more emotional labor spent trying to become more understandable, more likable, more patient. Instead, adopt a new rule. I only open the door for love that arrives whole. Not potential, not possibility, not one day. Real love, clear love, present love. That means when someone says, I'm not ready, you don't ask when they will be. You say, thank you for your honesty, and you exit. Fully, quietly, cleanly. That's not drama. That's dignity. It's not cold. It's conscious. And it's the very thing that teaches the world how to treat you not by force, not by protest, but by the way you protect your peace. Because your peace is now the standard. And peace doesn't chase. Peace doesn't wait for mixed signals to become declarations. Peace doesn't respond to inconsistency with more effort. Peace simply lives. And either people meet you there or they don't. That is the new you. And yes, he may keep texting. He may notice the silence. He may try harder for a moment. But don't confuse increased effort with changed intention. A man can escalate attention when he feels you slipping away, not because he's ready, but because he fears losing access. That's not love. That's control dressed as affection, and your stillness will reveal the truth. Because only when you stop dancing do you see who was leading the wrong rhythm all along. So here's your challenge. Next time he texts, don't ask yourself, should I reply? Ask yourself, what would the version of me who knows her worth do right now? Would she break her own silence to soothe someone else's guilt? Would she shrink her clarity to fit back into someone else's confusion? Would she re-enter a story that has no ending? Or would she stay with herself, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's unfamiliar, even if it's lonely? That moment is where transformation lives. That moment is where you stop being someone waiting to be loved and start being someone who lives as if she already is. Because she is. By herself. With herself. Through herself. And when you get to that place, everything changes. The way you speak, the way you walk, the way you choose, the way you release what no longer matches your energy. You start to notice things more clearly. Who shows up out of habit? Who stays out of depth? Who disappears when they're no longer being fed by your silence-breaking, heart-chasing energy? And slowly, beautifully, you start building a life that isn't centered around being wanted, but around being well. That's the path. And it's not always glamorous. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's painful. But it is always, always sacred. Because it leads you back to yourself. So let him keep texting if he must. Let him wonder. Let the silence do what words could never do. Draw a line, build a gate, crown your energy as sovereign. You don't need to explain your absence. Your evolution will make it clear, because he texts every day. But you are no longer the woman you were yesterday.